Welcome to Personnel Board. It's now 7 o'clock, so we will start. Apologies for absence. I know that Pauline Hillier-Simons wasn't able to make it. Have we had Stuart coming tonight?
Apologies from Stuart as well.
We have got apologies from Stuart. Okay, fantastic. I think everybody else is here. Minutes of the previous meeting. So to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 20th of September, noting that there are a couple of points which Louise is still chasing down to get out. Have we got any comments on the minutes? No? Okay. You propose that we go for them, seconded by Lindsay. All those in favour? That's it, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Do we have any declarations of interest? No, no declarations of interest. Public question time. Do we have any questions from members of the public?
No.
No? Fantastic. Thanks, Madeline. Member question time. No questions from members. So that takes us straight into the Q1 agency report. And I just wanted to say before Louise starts talking, I am really pleased with what we've got here. I think it's a big improvement that we have brought this into part one of the meeting, so that discussion of this can be held publicly, that we have public scrutiny of it. There are some follow-up questions which I'm going to ask Louise later, but I'll let you introduce it first.
Thank you, Chair. It's listed as Q1 and Q2 reports separately, but we've combined the reports together. So just to state that that's the layout that we've put in front of you. So the report's covering the period 1st of April to the 30th of September 2023. The HR team are continuing to work with finance with regards to our agency spend right across the council. Obviously, as we all recognise and we have said in this meeting, there are times when we need to use that agency, but those agency workers. But we are year on year down on spend by 142,000. So there is commitment to look at bringing that spend down. With regards to the way that we have presented it this time and sort of in a collated way, Q1 and 2, I just want to explain. So with regard to that, we've been doing some due diligence with finance around these figures. And as you can appreciate, but because we are procuring an item, we are invoiced at different times for that item. So what often happens is I would be presenting more of an accountancy piece of where sometimes we get minuses and we get pluses with regard to the invoices. So what I wanted to show you was the true spend for this period rather than an accountancy piece of minuses here, and it detracts from actually the money that's being spent in each of the different directorates, and hence the reason we've presented it this way. The headcount of agency we have broken down by Q1 and Q2. The Q1 is 72 as a headcount, and Q2 is 86 as a headcount. Invariably over the summer period, which is what you start to see in Q2, you do normally start to see the agency rise because you need to make sure that you've got adequate cover. There are with regard to the report explanations with regard to how that spend is across each of the different directorates. I think one thing that I've spoken to Councillor Bishop-Firth about is in the future, sometimes you see quite a bit of repeat information in this report. What we want to start highlighting are maybe new things or new trends that are actually happening within the agency requirement across the council, and I think that would be more informative to the committee with regard to actually what's happening. It's all still true and correct. It's just that some of those things around social workers being difficult to recruit to, that is a known fact, and I'm not trying to detract from it, but I'd rather be telling you the things we are doing about certain things with regards to, say, for example, there's some there's recruitment happening, some campaigns happening around social work. We've also in children's services been awarded some money from DFE with regard to the introduction of some apprenticeships, which means that we can use that money to pay for salaries and then use our apprenticeship levy. So again, new ways of growing our own. That won't happen overnight, but again, continuing to look for different ways to make improvements in this area. It's really still very high commitment within HR to continue to look at this, the work that we're doing with our directorates and our managers around this. We continue to benchmark with regard to what's happening in the other Berkshire councils. We are still sort of from the low side with regard to our spend in comparison to those councils. But again, I don't think this is one that this will be something that we will continue to bring here and we will continue to report on. And I can take any specific questions, and perhaps rather than continuing with my overview, I think there's a number of questions in the room that councillors might have.
Super. So I think it was Pauline first and then Stephen.
Thank you. I like the way it's done, but could we split Q1 from Q2?
Of course. Okay.
So I think that would give us an idea of which way it's going in the numbers, in the money. Apart from that, great. I think that's probably what we wanted, and it saves it all being in part 2 as well.
Perfect.
Sorry, I also want to say thank you for the report. It's very helpful, Louise. Can I just ask a question? You suggested that a rise in the number of agency workers in Q2 was in line with what's tended to happen in the past.
Yeah.
Do we have any data that we might be able to see at some stage on which would compare us with previous years, so we've got a sense of how we are tracking compared with that? That's the first question, and the next one really relates to the £142,000 saving as compared with last year, which is very good news. But I presume this is also something that it could just as easily have been above last year as below it. It depends so much on circumstances, doesn't it? We can try and drive this down and keep this under control, but we can see the biggest areas of employment are, surprise, surprise, children's services and adult social care. So we know that is going to be always subject to fluctuations and depending on demand.
And do you want, before I bring Prue in and then Lindsay, just to talk a little bit about that 142,000 and why you believe that we're seeing that dip?
And the earlier point about previous year's status.
Yeah, so I think we could start to, since I've now been here a year, I think we can definitely start to use the data that we've got. I don't know whether I would want to go back further than that, because I think when I explained to you when I first started, we had a bit of concern about the integrity of some of that data.
The way to be something that isn't like for like, because we'll end up with very false comparisons.
Yeah, absolutely, and I would not want to be giving that incorrect sort of. I want to show an improvement, but I want it to be real, and I need to be able to be transparent with you, and that we are sort of comparing apples with apples. With regard to the drive down with the figures, HR has been absolutely tasked with working with the recruiting managers with regards to, I suppose, the spend is lower as well because we are now doing it through Matrix and through the actual system we should be engaging and using to take on contract staff. So we are absolutely seeing improvements from that perspective. We're also challenging where we've had those longer tenures, which is something we did in a part 2 some time ago, and we're now looking at making sure there's challenge around all of those roles. I think the other thing we're also seeing is where we're saying that we're bringing in that specialist for a specific skill. What we are then seeing is that specialist leave.
Yeah.
And yes, we will still need another specialist, and there's no two ways about it. So I absolutely agree from the point of view of that fluctuation. But that is again some of the work that we've been doing. I think the other thing in children's services, because I appreciate that's where some of the high spend is. They really are trying really hard to look at the salary position around social workers, and doing a large amount of work around benchmarking with Berkshire. Now, we have to be careful with that, because obviously they're very different authorities and what you're maybe dealing with. But again, you have to be able to be competitive. And there's real examples where they've gone and offered a job and they've loved the authority, but have chosen another role because of from a salary perspective. So there's a lot of that.
There's a lot of things to consider. Thank you. That was really helpful. But it does sound as though although there are clearly fluctuations that may mean this saving figure goes up or down.
Yeah.
The general direction of travel probably is going to be downwards for the reasons you said, because there've been some structural changes in the way we approach this, which is very encouraging. So we shouldn't write it off as accidental.
No, but we are mindful of what.
Yeah, thank you. That's very helpful. Thanks.
Super. And then I think it was Prue and then Lindsay.
So Louise has picked up one of my points, which was going to be about the children's services benchmarking their salaries. We not only have sort of frontline social workers, we also now have some evidence that managers are starting to leave because they can get a higher salary somewhere else in Berkshire. So it's a bit silly to save on the salaries if you're going to spend a lot more on the agency stuff. So that is being reviewed, and I think that's a good thing. The apprentices point is also really good. That was something that social workers themselves really wanted us to do, so it's great that we've got the grant to do it, and excellent. There's a lot of initiatives looking at how we grow our own in other ways, which is also good. And some of the spend in children's services is a kind of invest to save thing. So we've got a couple of quite expensive consultants in at the moment, but they are helping transform children's services to make it much more cost effective going forwards. So they are worth their weight in salary. They've already made huge differences. So and they are on time limited. So
Whether I can just put a little footnote in about benchmarking. Is there a particular problem with Brighton because of the payment to the Outer London Alliance? Is that skew this?
It is one of those things that actually does come up. However, so we meet regularly and through our sort of network. And I don't think they're finding it as straightforward either at the moment. So it's something we just need to keep a watching brief on.
But no, I think it's it's going in the right direction, and I feel like it's gripped now, which I think is the most important thing. So thank you for that.
And I think that the work that we're doing on apprentices is particularly positive.
Yes.
I think that is really, really good news. That is really starting to grow our own, and that's a long-term solution. We're not going to see differences from that in the next 6 months, year, 2 years, but longer term, I think that should make a real difference to us.
I'd also like to make a commitment to Personnel Board that we plan to bring a paper wholly on apprenticeships into Personnel Board to just advise you on how we're progressing, because we do have a very strong officer who supports us in apprenticeships, very knowledgeable, even to the point of working with economic development and partnering external organisations to try and show if we can do it and demonstrate how we're doing it, how we can then help them too as well. So that commitment, I will make sure I talk to the chair with regard to what date we bring that report in.
Perfect. We're looking forward to that one. And then I think we had Lindsay and then Pauline again.
Yes, regarding the agency side of things, how much extra do they cost? A sort of a percentage on a like for like level per post. So how much extra are we costing per post? Not individually, but as a percentage. There must be some sort of markup the agencies use.
I think it really varies depending on the skill that you're actually looking for, and I'm afraid you're going to catch me out on that one. I don't know the specifics, but if I can confirm to give a written, I can give you a written.
Yeah, it's just that
just to give you an idea.
The agencies usually they take 15 to 20% or something. So there's they're certainly talking about that with nurses. They have a figure.
So through our matrix, through the matrix system, which is why we're making sure that all agencies taken on through that process, it's a set amount for the different roles that we take on. So I can come back and give you an answer.
Yeah, just to give an idea, because
Absolutely.
and obviously the children's and adult social services are statutory services, so we have that need to have as many of the people in those posts because they're the ones that we have to deal with. But with benchmarking against other authorities, I think some of the authorities in Berkshire are in quite a poor state financially. Royal Borough being one. Can they carry on paying extra on that? You know, others.
Difficult for me to comment on another council.
No, it's just a feeling that we, you know.
The biggest challenge is Bracknell. Bracknell is also in under financial strain. But I would imagine they will want to continue paying because they need these staff as well. We are effectively competing with each other for similar staff.
It's the statutory posts that's the important ones, and that they're the ones that any authority needs to have the posts, and I can see those, and they're the ones that generate.
They're certainly not going to cut
the
salaries, I'm sure.
Sorry,
they're certainly not going to cut salaries. So
That would be legally very difficult, wouldn't it? So
yeah. Well, they would definitely lose staff there.
Yeah, but there's already
Next.
people already leaving because they can see difficulties for the authority, and
Yeah.
you know, it's a very hard situation at the moment for people.
Yeah.
super. And then I think we had Pauline.
Thank you. I think the way you cut salaries, if you want to, is to change the mix. So you've got a salary band, and if you've got a lot of very expensive people at the top of the band because they're experienced, if you can change the mix and have a more variety of experience and still do the job, that's how you cut salaries. I think I was just thinking it was aligned to what Lindsay said, but not really the same question. I know I've been banging on about agency workers, and particularly the need to get rid of them when you don't need them anymore, rather than hanging on to them just in case they were handy, which I think is what's happening now, that you're actually stopping them when they've finished with them. I'm not against the agency workers on principle. So the other thing to look at is the actual fully loaded cost of a permanent person versus an agency worker. They're not always more expensive. I presume you've also done that. Yeah, and you need a healthy mix, I think. You need flexibility, and you need reliability, and you need experience. You need commitment to the council. So you need a mix of people, a mix of skills, and a mix of quality. But you need to get rid of agency workers that are expensive the minute you don't need them, I think.
Yeah, that's absolutely, Councillor, the commitment I can make to you that it's those types of roles that we're absolutely challenging now with regard to there's a project, there's a very specific outcome from that project. Once that outcome has taken place, it's time for then us to lose that resource. The other thing we do is if we do have an excellent resource, we do try and approach with regard to moving them on to fixed term arrangement. We have been successful in some I can't name because obviously we're in open open committee, but it's something we will always try. So it doesn't always work because obviously they know that they can command a certain salary for the type of skill that they've got, but we will always look to convert wherever we possibly can.
So when you're answering Lindsay's question about agency costs, it would be interesting to know the fully allocated manpower costs of an equivalent, so including the public sector pension cost, which is extreme, and the amount of leave that they get paid, etc., and the paid,
Yeah.
the overheads, the
Mm.
paid sick leave, all that stuff, how much that's actually worth versus the agency worker.
Yeah.
I mean, agency workers are usually more expensive, but they're not always more expensive. And I
That's
think
fair. Yeah.
adult social care might be a place where they're actually cheaper. And I'd be interested in the percentage you're paying the agencies as well, because I know how much I paid them. So it'd be interesting to get
No,
those.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Problem
I mean, I think we would always look at the fully loaded costs of an employee when making a comparison, wouldn't we? And I think,
Yeah.
you know, what you just referenced earlier, Pauline, which is making sure that when you've got an agency member of staff, you are very precise in how you manage them. You take them on at the point that you need them, you manage them, you manage their output, and then you let them go when they have finished their time with us in a very disciplined way. That's where I would expect that we can see real savings. And I know you've put quite a bit of focus into that, haven't you, Louise, in making sure that we do absolutely manage people to in a very, very disciplined way.
Yeah, and I think it's a constant, so I don't think it's something that we can take our eye off of it at all. It's a constant thing that we need to look at it. Yeah, absolutely.
Are there any more questions? Because if not, I will ask mine. And I do, you know, kind of commit that I don't come to meetings with kind of pre-agreed questions with Louise, but I'm breaking my rule this time, but I'm being honest about it. Actually, some of what I'm about to ask has already been asked by people around the table, but I will repeat it in case there's anything that Louise wants to add. And that is, with this report, I think it's made a tremendous difference, as I said at the beginning, bringing this to part one, trying to focus on the areas where we as councillors, as members, can add really strategic input and challenge and value to the discussion. One of the things that I know when we were setting this up, we were hoping that we could do, and we did discuss it, is mapping out what the trends are and really focusing in on where things have changed, as opposed to, as Louise mentioned, you know, for example, children's social workers. We know that's going to be an issue for some time to come. So that was the first part of the question, a lot of which has been covered in the discussion. And the second part was going to be about the timescales of when we might be able to start to move from this really excellent piece of work to something which is really bringing out the trends and the changes.
Yeah, I think with regard to committing to those trends, I'd like to sort of make sure we as we go into the new year, 24-25, that I will then start to be able to build those trends for you, because I know the data I've had for a year, and then I can build on that data. I would be reluctant to go back further than that at this point. I'd rather use the data that I have, but I think the trend information actually will be quite interesting, because I think that's what will be more informative, and I have been speaking to Rachel Bishop-Firth about that with regards to how we add to this report and give you more information.
Super. So if there are no more questions, I propose that we vote to receive Q1 and Q2 agency reports, so item 46 and 47. Seconded, I think, by Prue, and everybody in favour of that. Super. So the next point that we had on the agenda was the pay award for 2023, to receive an update on that. So Louise, over to you again.
So this is a national the national award. So this is by the National Joint Council for Local Government Services. So the pay award is for the period from the 1st of April 2023, and we received notification on the 1st of November that agreement had been made with the unions with regard to that pay agreement. So the agreement that this is where it can sound complicated. So the one thing I will just confirm back to you is I'm going to send you the paper that we had from the National Joint Committee, so you can actually read it. So if you have any questions that you want to raise with me, I'm very happy to answer them at a later date. And apologies for not forwarding that on before this meeting. So but just to sort of commence. So all employees up to what we call spinal column point 43 will receive a pay rise of £1,925 on each of the spinal column points. So each of those goes up by £1,925. For those officers that are above the spinal column point 43, they will receive a 3.88% pay rise. Just to be clear about that, all those in the lower part of the pay scale from I think 0.2 up to 0.43, the percentage rise is at least 3.88% or more, as £1,925 as a percentage of their salary. It does equate to that amount. And then they decided every point above would then not receive more than a 3.88% rise. That's the national agreement.
So I think we have Pauline and then Prue.
How much are the increments?
Sorry.
How much are the increments, the annual increments?
So the pay scales go up again. They differ because there's a
No, in a percentage. So how much? So they get an increment every year. What percentage increase does that give them? Presuming they perform well enough to get the increment.
That is the payment. So £1,925. They will actually.
No.
It's a seven.
No, you misunderstand me. So I've got £1,000 increments. I don't know what your increments are, but you've got somebody on increment 26 and they get £20,000, and somebody increment 27 gets 21,000. If you're increasing the increments, or you're increasing all the salaries by 1,925, they'll still get an increment every year.
Yes,
How much
yeah,
percentage does that give you?
The trouble is, again, they're all different.
But it'll be the same percentage, won't it?
No.
Oh, okay.
Well, £1,925, and maybe I'm misunderstanding.
You are misunderstanding me.
Maybe I'm being thick today.
You get what I mean, Sally. So if you've got an incremental pay scale and you say you've got 8 points in it,
In a grade.
and you go up
Yeah.
from point to point every year, as long as your performance is adequate, how much percentage increase does that equate to? Because that will be in addition to the 3.8.
Yeah, so as an example, I do understand what you mean. So within, say, grade 4, 5, 6, you've got increments within that grade. And that's what I'm saying, the amounts vary. So, for example, I'm just going to pick one out. So spinal column point 14 is £27,334. And spinal column point 15 is 27,803. So it's not even quite £500 difference. Yeah, but they're not all the same. And again, this is why it's really quite ununiform. But that's where these are the national pay scales. But I do understand absolutely what you mean.
Actually, your increase every year is not just 3.88, it's 3.88
Yeah.
for that increment.
Yeah, so for a grade, so obviously when you come into the role, you start at the bottom because maybe your experience isn't as good, and the cost of the actual job is usually the top of that range, because what you're saying is once you've reached the top, you should now be fully trained and fully knowledgeable and be able to perform that job. But yes, I do take the point you're making. If the person has for no reason, from a capability perspective, they should take that next step incrementally within their grade until obviously they reach the top. And then it will only be the national cost of living rise.
So in private industry, incremental pay schemes are very rare now. They're getting rarer. I mean, there still are some, but they are getting rarer.
Yeah.
And whenever you look at pay increases, you also need to take into account the impact of that incremental inflation. Yeah.
Can I just ask a question before I bring Prue in? And that is to say, my understanding is that this incremental pay scale, which you're right, Pauline, is not very common in private business, is very common in the public sector. It is the standard for the public sector.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And then I think we've got Prue and then Stephen.
So I've got 2 points on. Deal with the second. What's going to be the second one first? That we don't have any choice over this, do we? So we have to.
I'm afraid we are part of it.
Yes, and any attempt to try and do something on our own would almost certainly cost us more, because our negotiating power would be zero. So that was the first thing. The second point is, because we're in part one, and also for me, because I don't know, can you give us an indication of what the where the split comes between the 1900 and something and the 3.88? What sort of job is that? So
43 spinal.
what is
well,
spinal? What sort of officer are we? Final point 43.
That's grade 10.
So a grade 10, for example, could be a HR business partner. It could be an IT business partner. So it's at that level. It's kind of before you just get into management layer, really kind of more of the service. Correct.
So what we're saying is that everybody up to the sort of management will get the fixed sum because that's likely to be more than 3.88%, and everybody who's actually management will get 3.88. What would be helpful? Sorry, can we not talk while other people are talking? The to know how many people we've got who are on the top of their scale. Because obviously they don't get the increment either. So I'm not so interested in the top half of the council, but the ones nearer the bottom, who were the ones who could do with the extra increment, right? Where we are, just as a sort of straight, if you can give us something for next time, it doesn't have to be rushed out.
And I think this has been somewhat designed during the negotiation to make sure that those people who are on the lowest salaries do see the greatest benefit, because obviously those people are really, really squeezed in the current cost of living crisis. I think Lindsay, I think Stephen was first, and then I'll bring you in if that's okay.
My question has been asked already by groups.
Okay.
To make an observation that 1925, somebody on 19,250 gets a 10%. That's the maths for me. And then you can see how it comes down. Where gradually you double the figure, you're around at half.
Yeah.
It's a good way to do it.
Sorry, that's my quantum mechanics from you.
Yeah, super. But yes, I mean, ultimately, this is really for our information, because as Prue pointed out, this is something which is, we are part of a national negotiation. And so this really is for our information. Pauline.
I don't expect to know the answer, but I suppose you might do. But what impact does that have on our pension fund payments? Is there a problem?
Would have to come back on
Yeah,
that.
because there's a whole load of knock-ons of these things.
Yeah.
Not just the salary.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I'm sorry that I should have given you notice of that one, because I've only just thought of it.
So, are there any more questions, or are we all happy to receive that report? All happy to receive. Thank you very much, Louise. So the next item is exclusion of the public, because we're moving on to some areas which are for the time being confidential. So I need to read out my standard statement. So that under section 100A brackets 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 1 and 2 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act, as amended, as appropriate. Are we all agree?